Digital basics. What type of system is digital imaging? Does digital imaging have wide or narrow exposure latitude? Can digital systems hide overexposure? What does digital imaging rely on instead of film? What is a major risk with digital imaging? What type of system is digital imaging? It's a computer-based imaging system. Does digital imaging have wide or narrow exposure latitude? Digital imaging has wide exposure latitude. Can digital systems hide overexposure? Yes, digital imaging can hide overexposure. What does digital imaging rely on instead of film? Digital imaging relies on image processing. What is a major risk with digital imaging? Dose creep. Digital hides mistakes. Image looks good, but does not mean exposure was correct. Exposure indicator basic questions. What is exposure indicator? What does EI measure? Does EI reflect patient dose or detector exposure? High exposure indicator, more or less radiation? EI helps evaluate what? The answers are, what is an exposure indicator? It is the number that indicates exposure level. What does EI measure? Exposure indicator measures the amount of radiation reaching the detector. Does EI reflect patient dose or detector exposure? It reflects detector exposure. Higher EI equals more or less radiation. Exposure indicator equals more radiation. EI helps evaluate what? Exposure indicator helps evaluate image exposure accuracy. Memory trick, EI equals exposure to image receptor. Exam trap, EI does not directly measure patient dose. EI system and S number questions. Does EI increase with more exposure? Most systems. What happens to EI when exposure increases? What is the S number? S number increases with more or less exposure. What does a high S number mean? The answers for EI system and S numbers. Number 1, does EI increase with more exposure? Yes, in most systems it does increase. What happens to EI when exposure increases? The EI increases. What is the S number? Fuji system indicator. S number increases with more or less exposure? Less exposure. What does a high S number mean? Underexposed imaging. Memory, S equals smaller exposure, which equals a bigger number. Exam trap, EI increases but S number decreases. Opposite systems. Image quality and dose creep questions. What is dose creep? Why does dose creep happen? Does overexposure look obvious in digital imaging? What happens to noise with low exposure? What happens to noise with high exposure? And the answers are, what is dose creep? It's a gradual increase in radiation dose over time. Why does dose creep happen? Because digital hides overexposure. Does overexposure look obvious in digital imaging? No. Image can still look good even though it's overexposed. What happens to noise with low exposure? Noise increases. What happens to noise with high exposure? Noise decreases. Memory trick, low dose equals noisy image. Exam tip, digital systems trick you. Always check exposure index. Rapid recap. Question 1. Digital latitude equals 2. EI measures. 3. Higher EI equals 4. Dose creep equals 5. S number high equals, and 6. Noise high when equals, and the answers are digital latitude equals wide, EI measures detector exposure, higher EI equals more radiation, dose creep equals too much radiation over time, S number high equals low exposure, noise high when equals low dose. Recap, digital equals wide latitude hides errors. Exposure index equals detector exposure, not patient dose. Dose creep equals silent overexposure. S number equals opposite of exposure index. Low dose equals high noise. Replay, repeat, retain. See you on the next one.